Hi guys, and welcome to our stream today. It is Tuesday, September 11th, and yes, you're looking at some live satellite pictures of the storm. This is an updating map from our weather center, and that is the storm barreling towards the Carolinas. We're going to have live updates for you from some of our meteorologists down the road today in the afternoon, and just kind of following the storm as it is pretty much our most urgent piece of news today and through the week. They're expecting it to make landfall later in the week, so around Thursday or Friday, and we'll have those updates for you as well as some maps to share with you about this storm. But of course, it is also today a day of somber remembrance for 9/11, 17 years ago. And right now, as we do every year, we have that live camera at Ground Zero where family and friends of some of the victims, upwards of nearly 3,000 victims, of course, in that terrorist attack in 2001, their names are being read at Ground Zero. This is an annual event that they do to memorialize those victims. Nearly, I believe, 343 first responders died in the attack as well. So all of those people being memorialized at Ground Zero. Here's a sneak peek of that while we switch it up in just a second to show you what President Trump had to say at the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville.
Scott Suarez.
Ramon Suarez.
Dino Xavier Suarez Ramirez.
Yoichi Sumiyama Sugiyama.
William Christopher Shugra.
Daniel Thomas Sewer.
David Mark Sullins.
Christopher P. Sullivan.
Patrick Sullivan.
Thomas G. Sullivan.
Hilroy Sorano Sumaya Jr.
James Joseph Suarzo.
And my brother, Bart Joseph Ruggieri. What are you doing, Bart? We know you're looking over us every day because a day doesn't go by that we don't think about you and wish you were here. We'll raise a glass in your memory today and another toast next month, which would have been your 50th birthday. We love you.
And to my uncle Thomas Joseph Collins, whom my brother is named after and whom we miss dearly.
Colleen M. Sipinski.
Robert Sutcliffe.
Celine Sutter.
Claudia Suzette Sutton.
John Francis Swain.
Christine M. Swearson.
Brian David Sweeney.
Brian Edward Sweety.
Madeline Amy Sweeney.
Kenneth J. Swenson.
Thomas F. Swift.
Derek Ogilvie Sword.
Kevin Thomas Sozik.
Gina Steinberg.
Norbert P. Zakowski.
Harry Tabak.
Joanne C. Tabik.
Norma C. Today.
Michael Tadonio.
Kaishiro Takahashi.
Keiji Takahashi.
Phyllis Gale Talbot.
Robert R. Talhami.
John Talignani.
Firefighter Sean Patrick Talon, Ladder 10.
Paul Tolte.
Morita Tam.
Rachel Tamares.
Hector Rogan Tamayo.
Michael Andrew Tamaccio.
Kenichiro Tanaka.
Rondell Cherie Tankard.
Michael Anthony Tanner.
Dennis Gerard Taramina Jr.
Kenneth Joseph Tarantino.
Alan Tarasevich.
Michael C. Thoreau.
Ronald Tartaro.
Deborah Tavalarella.
Daryl Anthony Taylor.
Donnie Brooks Taylor.
Hilda E. Taylor.
Kip P. Taylor.
Leonard E. Taylor.
Larissa Salon Taylor.
Michael Morgan Taylor.
Sandra C. Taylor.
Sandra Dawn Teague.
Carl W. Teepee.
Paul A. Techmeyer.
Yeshivant Morishwa Tembe.
Anthony Tempesta.
Dorothy Pearl Temple.
Stanley L. Temple.
David Gustav Peter Tengelin.
Brian John Terenzi.
Lisa Marie Terry.
Gumati Thakurdeen.
Harshad Sham Thateh.
Michael Theodoridis.
And my brother, Lieutenant Philip Scott Petty of the New York City Fire Department, Ladder 12. We love and miss you tremendously, Phil. Not a day goes by that you aren't thought of, spoken about, and prayed for. We never get tired of hearing or telling stories about you. Forever in our hearts isn't a phrase written on your headstone, but it's how you will live on in our lives until the day we die. I love you, Phil. I'll talk to you later.
And my cousin, Maria Isabel Ramirez. It's been 17 years. We love you. We miss you. God bless America.
Thomas F. Thurkoff, Jr.
Leslie Ann Thomas.
Brian Thomas Thompson.
Clive Ian Thompson.
Glenn Thompson.
Nigel Bruce Thompson.
Perry A. Thompson.
Vanova Alexi Thompson.
William H. Thompson.
Eric Raymond Thorpe.
Nicola Angela Thorpe.
Tamara C. Thurman.
Sal Edward Thierry Jr.
John Patrick Tierney.
Mary Ellen Tiesi.
William Randolph Tista.
Kenneth Tejan.
Stephen Edward Ty.
Scott Charles Timmis.
Michael E. Tinley.
Jennifer M. Tino.
Robert Frank Topol.
Obviously, some beautiful shots there of Ground Zero and this annual event of reading the names of the victims. A lot of them very much so a quite personal experience for some of these people. They are reading names of loved ones, brothers and sisters and cousins, all of whom were victims in the terrorist attack 17 years ago. So we're going to kind of jump in and out of this feed. It is a continual thing this morning as we also cover the approach of Hurricane Florence. It is coming shortly towards the East Coast, and I know we've been talking about it all morning on our morning show. So if you're on with us here on the website or on YouTube, we are going to be covering that throughout the afternoon. Right now, a live look, let's switch it up briefly at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Looks pretty calm for now, but it is just the start of it all, and that storm is barreling towards the Carolinas, as we mentioned. But to keep us on generally this 9/11 memorial and this trend, there were so many memorial ceremonies this morning, including President Trump speaking at the Flight 93 memorial, which is a new memorial in Shanksville, PA. They just unveiled it on Sunday night, and it commemorates those victims of Flight 93. It is 93 feet tall, and it holds 40 wind chimes in memory of the 40 people who were on that flight. So this was President Trump just moments ago speaking on behalf of that and honoring those victims. Check it out.
Lisa L.
Among many of the prayers that he has written and published, Ted Loder wrote this prayer: "Empower me to be a bold participant rather than a timid saint in waiting. Help me not to wait in the difficulty of ordinariness, to exercise the authority of honesty rather than to defer to power or deceive to get it, to influence someone for justice rather than impress anyone for gain, and by grace to find treasures of joy, of friendship, of peace, hidden in the fields of daily life, the fields you give me to plow." Joshua, taking the people into a new land, was given a command 3 times: be strong and of good courage. Be strong and very courageous. Do not be afraid. They, the 40, acted not subdued by the power of violence and not held back by the disease of fear. They, our 40, acted from a friendship formed in but a few minutes, from a peace of heart and mind in their newfound community. They, the 40, were strong and courageous on behalf of you and I and all others, for the love of others and by grace to protect others. They challenge us to do no less than to live strong lives courageously for others. Be strong, be courageous. Do not be afraid. I ask you to weave your hearts and minds into one spirit as we pause in silence in their honor. Amen and amen.
Please be seated. On this day, at this very special time, Flight 93 National Memorial's architect, Mr. Paul Murdoch, will lead the reading of the names of the passengers and crew members of Flight 93. Mr. Murdoch will be joined by family members reading the names of their loved ones. For each name, Mr. Bill Anders and Sharon Custer, who proudly serve as Flight 93 ambassadors, will ring the bells of remembrance.
Christian Adams. Lorraine G. Bay.
Again, if you guys are on the stream with us here, in a moment you're going to hear President Trump's speech at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. This memorial was dedicated earlier this week, and today, of course, on the anniversary of 9/11, the President and First Lady were up there to memorialize the victims and talk a little bit more about the events of that day. And here you're kind of watching the ceremonial pre-speech time where they ring the bells and listen to the wind chimes of this new memorial.
My son was loved, Gerald born Bingham, and I loved him very much. Thank you.
Deora Frances Bodley.
Sandy Waugh Bradshaw. Marion R. Britton.
So these names there of the victims of Flight 93 continue to be read, and we're going to push it forward to show you what the president had to say about this. But first, live, the names being read at ground zero of the victims of the attack on 9/11 17 years ago. This is live from Manhattan. Take a listen.
Deborah Jacob Welsh.
Timothy Matthew Welty.
Christian Hans Rudolph Wemmers.
Su Hui Wen.
John Joseph Wenkus.
Ola D. Wengerchuk.
Peter M. West.
Whitfield West Jr.
Meredith Lynn Whalen.
Eugene Michael Whalen.
Adam S. White.
Edward James White III.
James Patrick White.
And my Aunt Lucia Crafasi, who was a truly amazing woman, and even though I never got to meet her, I will always hold the memories in my heart that I was the niece that she was always going to meet. Please keep watching over me, my sister, to Maria, Uncle Frank, and the rest of the family. We love you and miss you.
And my cousin, Ferdinand V. Marone, Superintendent of the Port Authority Police, who ran in to save others, making the ultimate sacrifice. I love hearing about you from those who worked by your side and from family who miss you dearly. You touched all of our lives with laughter and love. You were larger than life, and we will always remember your strength and kindness. That's from Christina and Tina. We honor you today and every day. We love you always. In valor, there is hope. God bless America.
John Sylvester White.
Kenneth Wilburn White, Jr.
Leonard Anthony White.
Melissa Y. White.
Maudlin A. White.
Sandra L. White.
Wayne White.
Leanne Marie Whiteside.
Mark P. Whitford.
Leslie A. Whittington.
Michael T. Holy.
Mary Lenz Wyman.
Jeffrey David Wiener.
William J. Wick,
Allison Marie Wildman,
Glenn E. Wilkinson,
Ernest M. Wilshire,
John Charles Willett,
Brian Patrick Williams,
Candace Lee Williams,
Crossley Richard Williams Jr.,
David J. Williams,
David Lucian Williams,
Debbie L. Williams,
Dwayne Williams,
Kevin Michael Williams,
Louis Anthony Williams,
Louis Calvin Williams III,
John P. Williamson,
Donna Ann Wilson,
William Eben Wilson,
David Harold Winton,
Glenn J. Winnock,
Thomas Francis Wise,
Alan L. Wisniewski,
Frank Paul Wisniewski,
David Wiswall,
Sigrid Charlotte Wiswy,
Michael R. Wittenstein.
Well, there are memorials to honor the victims of 9/11 all over today, both at Ground Zero and then, of course, here in Arlington, Virginia at the Pentagon, and also at Shanksville, Pennsylvania's memorial site. That was dedicated on Sunday night, a brand new structure in memoriam of the 40 people who died on Flight 93. And the president had some words for that at that ceremony this morning. Just a few moments ago, I want to touch into what he had to say. A couple speakers preface the president, and then he speaks on behalf of those victims. Check it out from this morning in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Institutions, along with our confidence. Governors Ridge and Schweiker and their colleagues nationally set a path toward recovery, and their dedication to this very site has given thousands of visitors a means to remember true heroism and real patriotism. And I thank both Governor Ridge and Governor Schweiker for their inspiration and for their service. And so it is with great honor that I introduce Pennsylvania's 44th governor, Governor Mark Schweiker.
Thank you, Governor Wolf. And thanks as well to the partnership and the families. Gordy, thank you so much for the privilege on such sacred ground to offer what I consider to be important reflections. Mr. President, for the heroes we honor today and every day, please know that I am still in awe of them, as expressed the last time I officially spoke here on the first anniversary. It was here that freedom took its first stand. Today, this morning, again, we gather to reflect on the sacrifice that we've never forgotten. It's hard to believe that it's been 6,205 days since they defeated terror in the skies above. But as we know, time has a tendency to stand still when loved ones are ripped from us, yet we continue to hold them so close to our heart. Back then, we made a pact that we would never forget, and we never have. I want you to know that at difficult times in my life, my thoughts go to them. Their sacrifice, their patriotism, their love for America was and remains so incredibly pure that it is difficult for many to grasp. Thomas Burnett Jr. told his wife, Dina, a group of us are getting ready to do something. I have to go. I love you. Goodbye. Gordon Felt's brother, Edward, called 911 to report the hijacking. In a moment of horror, he too was thinking of others. Deora Frances Bodley would be 38 years old today. That day, she was the youngest passenger on board. Deora's mom, Debbie, touchingly told a reporter in 2015, "It's important to me that the visitor sees what these 40 people took on to take a stand for freedom, to take the kind of stand that cost their lives. Maybe there will be some special thing they see about Deora that will inspire them. As I said to Debbie on Sunday at the dedication, we know how special your daughter is. We know how special they all are. And yes, they inspire us to this minute. That's why this moment together is so fitting, and if I may say, timely. As they did in the years leading up to 2001, our counterintelligence agencies are now watching attacks again in faraway places. The president's own director of national intelligence confirmed this just last week when he said they are growing increasingly aggressive. As we saw in Indonesia only a few months ago, men, women, and children, entire family units are committing vile acts of terrorism. The threats remain very real, so we must remain vigilant, and we must prepare a new generation of leadership. As I've had at times the university responsibility to relate the Flight 93 story to Homeland Security grad students, reality set in for me not too long ago. The fact is, friends, our college students aren't old enough to remember firsthand what happened here. So, as I marveled at the Tower of Voices on Sunday, I cannot help but think of the biblical and oral storytellers of centuries ago and their own motivation. They traveled and met with countless people to voice recollections and stories of history that remain critical to their past and their future. In colonial times, these stories
We'll quickly break in here for a special tribute from New York City's Ground Zero. Take a look at this. This is live honoring the victims at Ground Zero. Listen in.
Events that shaped their lives and cultures. Might I suggest then that these chimes, Paul, on this sacred ground, help tell the story of 40 brave souls who came together by chance, sacrificed to provide protection, and in so doing changed our world. It's as if these chimes musically ring in our ears with three striking notes. We must never forget what took place here. We must never forget the heroes who sacrificed here. And we must never forget and always strive to reach the purity of their remarkably noble sacrifice. So, my fellow Americans, can you hear the chorus? Do you hear the Patriots' call? Hopefully, you do. So when you return home to your daily lives, please share the story of the Flight 93 Patriots. Be their storyteller. And when you do, tell everyone, on September 11th, 2001, at 9:33 a.m., it was here that freedom took its dramatic stand. God bless us all in this important work, and thank you for having me, Gordy.
Thank you, Governor Wolf, Governor Schweiker, for your very powerful and heartening words. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Gordon Felt, President of the Families of Flight 93. This organization and this very, very special group of individuals are an integral part of the stewardship of Flight 93 National Memorial. On September 11th, 2001, Gordon's eldest brother, Edward P. Felt, was killed aboard Flight 93 as the passengers and crew members fought to retake control of that airplane. Since those early days, as our country struggled to make sense of the loss of thousands of our citizens, Gordon has served as the spokesman for the families of Flight 93. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Gordon Felt.
Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, Governor Wolf, Governor Schweiker, Secretary Zinke, Senator and Mrs. Casey, Congressman Schuster, Rothfuss, and Barletta, Captain and crew of the USS Somerset, distinguished guests, those that serve our nation through their work with the National Park Service, National Park Foundation, Flight 93 National Memorial Ambassadors, friends of Flight 93, visitors, and dearest to my heart, families of Flight 93. I welcome you to our annual service to honor the 40 extraordinary heroes of United Flight 93. 17 years ago, I and scores of other family members that had experienced the tragic loss of a loved one on September 11th, 2001, were loaded onto buses and escorted along country roads lined with first responders saluting at attention, and families with children waving flags, hands over their hearts as a gesture of respect for those that we family members lost in what has been referred to as that first battle fought against this current brand of terrorism on American soil. Our destination was a site just behind us on the Western Overlook. At that moment when we first looked out over a field torn asunder, smelling of jet fuel, burned and gravely wounded, we and our country were grievously injured, hurting, angry, devastated, confused, and cast adrift into a world that offered only uncertainty, violence, and fear. Little did we know in that moment that the choices our loved ones made during the final 35 excruciatingly terrifying minutes of their lives, as well as the actions being taken on the ground in New York City and at the Pentagon, little did we know that they would serve to inspire a nation and reaffirm a standard of exceptionalism inherent in those that understand the unrelenting nature of freedom-loving peoples. This memorial is dedicated to preserving the stories of the 40 heroes of Flight 93 and their collective actions. Our newly dedicated Tower of Voices stands at the entrance of this great memorial, defiantly, reminding us of how 40 strangers came together, planned, prayed, voted, and chose to fight, foiling one prong of a terrorist attack against our country 5 years in the making. They were not passive. They did not sit back and let events unfold before them. They did not cower. Because of their actions, further loss of life was averted, and the preeminent symbol of our democracy was preserved. This Flight 93 National Memorial was designed to not only honor their memory and enshrine the history of September 11th, 2001 for future generations, but to also inspire those that take time to bear witness to their sacrifice. 35 minutes, a fraction of an hour, a lifetime to our loved ones. 35 minutes during which a choice was made, the course of history was changed, and a more devastating impact of the terrorist attack against our country was averted. I'm often asked what, if anything, can we learn from the events of September 11th? It's a complex question and one that could provoke hour upon hour of discussion, leading to many tangential responses. However, I firmly believe that the heroes of Flight 93 set a standard, reminding us what we instinctually know to be true, but all too often neglect to realize. The diverse individuals aboard Flight 93 the morning of September 11th, 2001, could easily have been any one of us. They ranged in age, from the unborn to those enjoying retirement, from varying backgrounds, professions, ethnicities, countries, and religions, whose diversity clearly added significant value to the choice that they made. When faced with a challenge that hopefully far exceeds anything that most of us will ever have to face, they were able to come together in mere minutes, not as 40 individuals, but rather as one unified force. They chose to stand together and fight as a single, united group. In their case, it was a hastily planned attack to retake control of a plane. On the ground in New York and at the Pentagon, it was a choice to run into buildings, or if already there, to assist others from fiery infernos on the verge of collapse. How do we honor these heroes? How do we help keep their memory alive so that they can continue to motivate us and impact the course of our history? The answer, as I've been trying to articulate for years, is by choosing to do so. We have to choose to actively remember. There should never be a time when we willingly sit back and opt to remain idle when evil threatens our freedom. We have to choose to be inspired by the collaborative actions of our heroes. And most importantly, choose to rise up and be better, as our loved ones did in their final moments. They deserve no less. And we, as freedom-loving people, can afford no less. For if we choose to forget the lessons learned on September 11th, 2001, through neglect, apathy, or distraction, we will become less honorable, less heroic, and less free. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordy. I'm truly honored to call you my friend. Now I would like to introduce the United States Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke. Secretary Zinke was sworn in as the 52nd Secretary of Interior in March of 2017. He leads an agency with more than 70,000 employees who are stewards of many of our
Again, if you are
public
just joining us, guys, we're live in our newsroom here in Washington, D.C., Fox 5 D.C., and you're looking at the video of President Trump from earlier this morning, just moments ago, really, with Melania Trump there, FLOTUS, along with him at the Shanksville, Pennsylvania Memorial for Flight 93. He has a few words that he does share, and we're going to play out a piece of his speech. But for now, this is sort of the intro moment. They are commemorating the 40 lost lives in Flight 93. Now, this morning, we're also going to be switching our feeds up to Ground Zero, where we have live cameras of some of the memorials there and the reading of the names of those victims, as well as we'll be switching gears a little bit and talking about Hurricane Florence, which is primed to barrel towards the Carolinas today. So we're hearing a little more from Ryan Zinke here, and then the president, and we're going to switch it up in just a little bit. So thanks for staying on with us, and please feel free to hang out on our stream today as we stay live throughout the afternoon with all your coverage here of the hurricane and of the 9/11 memorials.
The Navy SEAL instructor. I recall looking in the eyes of the young SEAL candidates and knowing at that time their lives would change forever. The last lines of our national anthem tell us that America is the home of the brave. And on that day, courageous patriots exemplified that bravery in the aisles of Flight 93. Though it's been 17 years, the pain of their passing remains. I visited this site last year with Vice President Pence and was honored to share the sound of the first chime with the families. Our great park system tells stories. The stories of our conservation ethic, of the great epic parks to the west, to our battlefields, our civil rights monuments, our women's rights sites, and this Flight 93 memorial that we're honored to be at today. It truly is a story of heroes, a story of tragedy, and most importantly, a story of our shared values of America as self-sacrifice, duty, and honor. It's also a story that reminds us that the fight for freedom never ends. The crew and passengers of Flight 93 gave their lives for this great nation, and their sacrifice shall never be forgotten, neither here in the fields of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or across our great nation. And it's in their name, in the name of all those who gave their lives for our country, that we never forget this tragedy and remain vigilant against those that wish to destroy our values and our nation. Today, as a combat veteran, it's my distinct privilege and honor to be here with the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his beautiful First Lady, Melania. And I would like to thank Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, for his leadership on national security, his support of law enforcement, first responders, and his unwavering support of protecting our borders. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our President, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ryan. So beautiful. We're gathered together on these hallowed grounds to honor the memory of nearly 3,000 souls who were murdered on this day 17 years ago. We're here to pay solemn tribute to the 40 passengers and crew members on Flight 93 who rose up, defied the enemy, took control of their destiny, and changed the course of history. Today we mourn their loss, we share their story, and we commemorate their incredible valor. On September 11th, 2001, a band of brave patriots turned the tide on our nation's enemies and joined the immortal ranks of American heroes. At this memorial on this sacred earth, in the field beyond this wall, and in the skies above our heads, we remember the moment when America fought back. Melania and I are grateful to be joined for today's ceremony by Governor Tom Wolf and Governor Mark Schweiker. I also want to thank the members of Congress in attendance, Senator Bob Casey, Congressman Lou Barletta, Keith Rothfuss, Bill Schuster, and along with the president of the families of Flight 93, Gordon Felt. We're also joined by members of the National Park Service, along with firefighters, first responders, and incredible people from law enforcement. These are truly great people. Some of you here today answered the call and raced to this field 17 years ago. You fill our hearts with pride, and I want to thank you on behalf of our country. Thank you very much. Most importantly, to the family members of Flight 93. Today, all of America wraps up and joins together. We close our arms to help you shoulder your pain and to carry your great, great sorrow. Your tears are not shed alone, for they are shared grief with an entire nation. We grieve together for every mother and father, sister and brother, son and daughter who was stolen from us at the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and here in this Pennsylvania field. We honor their sacrifice by pledging to never flinch in the face of evil and to do whatever it takes to keep America safe. "17 years ago, your loved ones were among the 40 of Flight 93, the 40 passengers and crew members on board the 8 a.m. United Airlines flight from Newark to San Francisco. They were men and women from every background. They were young people returning from visiting family, moms and dads on business trips, and friends going and coming from birthdays and weddings. They boarded the plane as strangers, and they entered eternity, linked forever as true heroes. Soon after takeoff, Flight 93 was hijacked by evil men bent on terror and conquest. Passengers and crew members began using their phones to call home. They learned that 2 planes had already crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City. Immediately, those on board Flight 93 started planning a response. Sandy Bradshaw, a flight attendant called her husband and told him they were in the back of the plane preparing hot water to throw onto the hijackers. Passenger Jeremy Glick explained the plan to his wife and said, "Stay on the line, I'll be back." The passengers and crew members came together, took a vote, and they decided to act. At that moment, they took their fate and America's fate back into their own hands. In the last 20 minutes, many placed their final calls home, whispering those eternal words, "I love you." Some said the Lord's Prayer, and then they bravely charged the cockpit. They attacked the enemy. They fought until the very end, and they stopped the forces of terror and defeated this wicked, horrible, evil plan. Flight 93 crashed yards from where we stand, just 20 minutes flying time from the United States Capitol. Through their sacrifice, the 40 saved the lives of countless Americans, and they saved our capital from a devastating strike. In the days after the attack, tens of thousands of firefighters, police officers, and recovery workers traveled to New York and Arlington to crawl through the rubble and search for survivors. There were prayer vigils, memorials, and charity drives all across our nation. Here in Shanksville, many of you raised up the first memorial, a wooden cross, a chain-linked fence, mementos and tributes pouring in, and dozens of American flags. A piece of America's heart is buried on these grounds, but in its place has grown a new resolve to live our lives with the same grace and courage as the heroes of Flight 93.
Those are the words of the president today at the Shanksville Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And I want to switch gears briefly because we're also talking about Hurricane Florence, as you know, a Category 4 storm right now. The governor of North Carolina is speaking about the state of emergency in his state. I believe actually he just stepped off the podium. Some other officials in Carolina are speaking. So here are those officials from North Carolina about their plan in place and what to expect. Quick side note also, the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, this morning in a small bit of breaking news, also declared the district as in a state of emergency. So we're kind of on watch here, but even more in the line of fire for this hurricane is North Carolina. And here's the governor and some other state officials on what to expect.
In eastern North Carolina at the Global Trans Park, that will be supporting both state response and federal response with supplies, boat rescue, medical supplies, all of the things that we need, as well as an incident command will be supporting that effort there. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
We're also grateful to have the members of the North Carolina Highway Patrol. We are counting on them. We've activated National Guard troops, and both Commander McNeil and General Lusk are here to answer questions about that. We want to tell people and remind people to gather your supplies that you need and follow evacuation orders and make sure you monitor weather forecasts. Remember, if you haven't gathered these already, you need enough supplies for several days, including food, water, flashlights, batteries, needed medication, and pet supplies. North Carolinians are strong, and we are resilient. We will get through this. We've weathered tough hurricanes before, and we will do it again. Any of us is available to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
Governor, it seems like South Carolina has ordered evacuations deeper into the state. Can you speak a little bit to what they're doing versus what we're doing? They're also reversing interstates. I don't believe we're doing that. Why is that?
Our system is different from South Carolina. Our local governments make decisions on evacuations, and there are a number of local evacuation orders that have been issued and will continue to be issued. Many of them will be further inland, particularly as we know where the hurricane will go and where inland areas may flood. The state, to our knowledge, has never issued an evacuation order. This is the first one of its kind, and I am issuing it for the barrier islands. We believe that most of the local governments on the barrier islands will issue evacuation orders, but we think this storm is so fierce that we need the added incentive of a state evacuation order to make sure that these people on the barrier islands leave and to make sure that people are evacuated. And as for evacuations and the Department of Transportation, I may let Secretary Trogdon answer this, but we want to make sure that people get out and make sure that the roads are safe and open for them to do so. The Department of Transportation is working to make sure that that happens, along with our highway patrol. I think our highway system is different from South Carolina's, but what I might do here is ask Secretary Trogdon to address this question too.
Thank you, Governor. Yeah, unlike Charleston area, and we're in coordination with both South Carolina and Virginia, but unlike Charleston, really high density population there that's only served by one major facility. In eastern North Carolina, all the way from Brunswick County up to Morehead City, we have lots of evacuation route alternatives with a much more dispersed population. All of our routes are green, and we've also flexed additional motorist assistance patrols to make sure that we're responding to vehicles that may be slowing down or broken down. So all of our routes are green. We're going to continue to monitor, but we believe with this kind of lead time, our existing facilities and infrastructure will support our evacuation needs.
And then if I could just ask a follow-up to clarify something. I believe there's something called the CRESS, the Coastal Regional Evacuation Plan. Has that not been activated yet, and will it be activated? Is that on the table?
Yes, sir. That's the Coastal Regional Shelter and Evacuation Plan, just like you're talking about, and it has been activated, and we've been working with our eastern counties and our central branch counties to affect that. So folks that are evacuating to the west, we try to make sure that they have a place to evacuate to.
Elena from ABC 11, I'm kind of piggyback off of what he was saying, and I have two questions. Here in Raleigh, we're supposed to get a good amount of rain, and you also talked about the storm stalling inland. So first, is Raleigh far enough west or far enough east for folks to evacuate? And also, is there an inland evacuation plan?
Right. So let me see if I understand the question. So is Raleigh far enough west for people to evacuate to? Okay. You know, we think so. And so where we're going to put them in shelters in Raleigh, we think that in fact, it's a requirement that we don't have a shelter that's in the floodplain. And so we would make sure that it's not around creeks and rivers that would flood. And what was the second part of the question?
Inland evacuation plan, Tarboro, these are communities that were really underwater after Matthew.
Right. So oftentimes you will find counties like Edgecombe County and where Tarboro is located, they will have their own internal sheltering capacity for riverine flooding. And we do think that the Tar has a high possibility of flooding like most of the rivers in the east.
but we can also surge to the west to find other shelters as needed.
Yes, sir. Here. Okay.
Calling quickly with CBS 17, if you can, you've really been asking people to evacuate now. Why is it so important they do that now rather than once the water gets higher, especially the danger of what could be in those floodwaters?
Well, first, we know that this storm surge will be significant. So we need people to evacuate now to make sure they have the time to get where they need to be. One thing about North Carolinians is that we're helping each other, and we know that friends and family are accepting people who are coming west. We know some people are going out of state and some people are staying in hotels. But it is important for them to go ahead and get out now. This storm is getting nearer and nearer. We will be experiencing tropical force winds at some point. So people need to get out now. We don't want everybody leaving at once. And we think people are doing a pretty good job of this. But one of the reasons that I issued the evacuation order for the barrier islands is to make sure people understand that this is not a storm that you need to try and ride out. It is one of those storms that is historic and maybe once in a lifetime. And I know that we North Carolinians are a hardy bunch, and we've seen nor'easters and we've seen hurricanes before, but this one is different. And we want to make sure that people know that, because they are risking their lives when they stay. They're also risking the lives of first responders, although in many instances on these barrier islands, there may be no way to get to them for some period of time.
Governor or Mr. Sprayberry, there are a lot of low-lying areas that have dealt with flooding from Floyd, from Matthew, and a lot of those, and some of these communities are low income, might be difficult for people to actually move to higher ground. Are there things in place that are designed to help them, or is it more just the municipalities or the counties just going to have to foot the bill to move these people?
Well, one of the things that we've done is more mapping of potential flooding so that we will be able to work with the local governments to help them be able to predict where flooding will be so that they can tell people to move from those low-lying areas. And the idea is to have those shelters available to people on higher ground. And no matter what their income, we want people out of places that may be flooding. Mike, if you wanted to.
Sir, I think you hit it.
Okay. Any other questions people have? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Actually, as a follow-up to your statewide mandatory order, could you explain, when you say barrier islands, there's a lot of them out there, could you be more specific?
Well, it is specified in the order, but any of the barrier islands that are from the Virginia border all the way down to the South Carolina, all of the barrier islands, yes. All right, we will be back. Let you know when. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
What's the risk of flooding in the Raleigh area itself, and what's being done to mitigate that?
Okay, Mike, I'll let you take that one.
The question again, please, ma'am.
What's the risk of flooding in the Raleigh area itself, and what's being done to mitigate it?
So, as you know, it floods frequently here in Raleigh around places like Crabtree Creek, and so we work with our local partners to map those risks, and I'm quite sure that they'll be putting out information at the local level to ensure that the folks that live in Wake County will be aware of any types of flooding risk. We work with them as well.
But the assumption that things will flood.
You know, there's going to be a lot of rain, so you can. I typically don't go on assumptions, but I do try to prepare and plan. And so I would tell everybody that we're looking at a tremendous amount of precipitation. You've seen the weather reports just like me, up to 20 inches or more. I think that would be a fair assumption. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Get that. Yes, sir.
Was there consideration to
evacuate Hanover, Pender, Brunswick County, some of these higher populated areas. Was there discussion about that, and is that something that still could take place?
Those were local decisions that have been made traditionally in North Carolina. We worked with them and advised them. Mike, I might want to let you, you've been talking with them directly.
Those decisions have been made and those evacuations are ongoing.
Okay, thanks guys, we'll be back.
Well, that's the governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, updating on the situation in the Carolinas. A major threat this is to the Carolinas. As we know, Category 4 Hurricane Florence still approaching that area. We have a couple of meteorologists actually who are about to be on the road down there, and they'll get some footage down in, I believe, Jacksonville, North Carolina. That's the first stop. So we're going to see if we can hear from them in a little bit, if we get some footage from them. If not, they'll definitely be live on our evening shows tonight at 5 o'clock starting on TV. But if you're on with us digitally, maybe you're wondering how the district itself is faring. We're here in the DMV and we're part of the District of Columbia, and we want to know, should we hunker down and really brace ourselves for this? Well, this morning, the mayor, Muriel Bowser, declared it a state of emergency officially here in the district, and she and the fire chief, as well as some other officials this morning, spoke about preparedness for this storm as we approach it later on in this week. This is what they had to say just a few moments ago this morning.
Is Dabney Hudson here? I wanted to call him up. Would you please come up? The head of the union. And if you want to make a few remarks, but we gave the chief the resolution, but through you, we also have a little sweet gift that we always bring something for the station. And I do this with my stations also in my ward. But so we'd like to present this for them through you.
Perfect.
Dabney.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I got to share? Yeah, perfect. So thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Che, Council Chair Mendelson, Mayor Bowser, and Councilmember McDuffie. You know, I was thinking when you made the proclamation earlier, we've now lost more first responders to occupational diseases contracted by responding to the Twin Towers that day and the other incident scenes. And it's difficult because oftentimes politicians like to jump on the bandwagon of first responders and kind of play games and not treat us the way they should. But I'd like to say that everybody standing here today, through legislation that they've enacted, through presumptive legislation, have more than stepped up, followed through on their promises to the first responders, to everybody behind us today, through funding apparatus, funding training, the toxic flame retardant bills, the legislation that Councilmember McDuffie, when he chaired the committee for the aerial testing and pump testing. These are people that truly have the hearts of our first responders and all Washingtonians at their hearts. So I'd like to thank you, all of you, for the work that you've done to ensure that we have the tools, the equipment, and the support from our council and our city that we need to do our job every day. So thank you all. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all very much. And as soon as Mr. Dabney Hudson is able to open those out of the public here, then you can enjoy those. But what's going to happen now, immediately after this, is the mayor is going to step outside. You're going outside? Or staying here? We're going to stay right here, and she's going to identify and explain the preparations that we're making in case the hurricane hits us. But also, again, it's really appropriate that we do it here because, as I said before, key to our preparations will be the at the ready fire and EMS to help us when we're in a crisis. So, Mayor, I think we can just move right into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member, and once again, thanks to the members of DC Fire and EMS. Thank you, Chief. I want to now invite members of our team to help in the briefing on our preparations for Hurricane Florence. I'm joined by Chief Dean, Chief Newsham, Director Chris Rodriguez from HCEMA, Director Chris Shorter from DPW, Director Jeff Marudian from DDOT, Director Laura Zeilinger from Department of Human Services, Director Julia Irvin from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services. I'm joined by our City Administrator, Rashad Young, Director Julie Lawson, Clean Cities. We're also joined by members of our public utility team, David Gaddis, who is the GM and CEO of DC Water, David Velasquez, President and CEO of PEPCO, Paul Wiedenfeld, the General Manager of WMATA, and any of the council members who would like to be present for questions. We will take questions at the conclusion of my remarks and Director Rodriguez's remarks. We are, of course, preparing for Hurricane Florence, and I want to assure the public that all the information that we have, we will share so that they can make preparations to be safe. This morning, I signed a mayor's order declaring a state of emergency effective immediately. This ensures that we will have the resources and supports we need to prepare for Florence. As you might remember, the last time I declared a state of emergency was on January 21st, 2016, in preparation for a large snow, so that we can make sure everyone gets timely updates through the week. We are asking all residents that have not already done so to sign up to receive text alerts at alertdc.dc.gov, alertdc.dc.gov. By doing so, you can receive important information through text and email. And in addition to signing up for alerts, we also ask that each of you reach out to your family members, friends, and neighbors who may need assistance getting signed up. While we're still tracking Hurricane Florence's trajectory, we are also, as the hours and days move on, we'll have a better sense of its potential impact on DC. We know that there will be flooding, heavy rain and wind, and likely power outages. So given that we know this already, we want residents to prepare accordingly. Get to the grocery store, make sure you have your medications, make sure you have flashlights and batteries. And residents can go to ready.dc.gov for more tips on how to prepare. I'll also add that the DC 311 app may be added to your phone. We're asking all residents to use 311 to report flooding and other non-emergency needs. As we monitor this weather event, we will continue to provide updates and get information out to our residents. We know that we have several special events planned in the city this weekend, and we are working with organizers to identify a new date for Fiesta DC and the H Street Northeast Festival. They are being rescheduled, and that information will be made as soon as it's available. I would like now to call on Director Chris Rodriguez, who leads our emergency management agency.
Thank you, Mayor. The DC Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency is the central coordinating agency for the district's overall response to potential hurricanes here in the nation's capital. Since last week, at the mayor's direction, HCEMA has been monitoring the storm and briefing her senior leadership team. We have been coordinating with district agencies as well as our key regional and federal partners regarding any necessary actions that we need to take ahead of Hurricane Florence making landfall. As of this morning, as the mayor said, what we can tell you about the predicted path of the hurricane is that the district will experience heavy rain, and that will result in localized and surge of flooding, particularly among our low-lying areas, down trees, power lines, and possible outages and transportation disruptions. Now, it's important to note that weather forecasting associated with this hurricane and with all hurricanes is complex, It's constantly changing, but again, under the mayor's leadership, we're not going to let up on our preparations until we are sure that the district is in the clear. HCEMA is also preparing the district's Emergency Operations Center for extended response and recovery operations, and we are coordinating with the directors of the district agencies behind me, as well as with our utilities and our federal partners. We are on a daily basis also coordinating with critical infrastructure and public transportation partners, including Metro, to ensure that our efforts, preparedness efforts, are coordinated as well. Now, while hundreds work behind the scenes to prepare the district, I just want to reiterate what the mayor just said, and that is for district residents to be our preparedness partners and to take several steps. The first is to sign up for those alerts that the mayor mentioned at alertdc.dc.gov. That is the way we will be communicating with the public throughout the duration of this event. The second is to restock your supplies and review your individual and family emergency plans. Make sure your cell phones, mobile devices are charged. Make sure you have cash on hand. Your prescriptions are up to date and full through the end of next week. Take an inventory of items that you need to rely on for electricity, including personal medical equipment. Talk to your medical providers about power outage plans for devices powered by electricity and refrigerated medicines. Finally, do not stand or walk through standing water. There will be flooding in the district, so I just want to urge residents to be careful of that. Just 6 inches of moving water can knock you down, okay? And 1 foot of moving water can sweep a vehicle away and potentially putting first responders at risk of trying to rescue someone. For additional tips, again, as the mayor mentioned, on how to prepare, go to ready.dc.gov, and I'll invite the mayor back for any questions that you have.
Questions? Yes, Sam. We will be likely noticing a sandbag pickup location. We're trying to get it as localized as possible. Come again? Yes, if we find that that's necessary, we will advise on the locations for the distribution points. Yes. Sure. Well, DDOT will, and I'll ask our director to come up on all transportation issues, and if Metro would like to make a comment about preparations regarding to transportation, I'll turn to Mr. Wiedefeld.
Good morning. Our team at DDOT has been working across the entire agency, and these are events that we prepare year-round for. So first and foremost, we are prepared to handle the volume of tree issues that may arise. Our in-house crews are prepared to address any downed trees, tree limbs that are potentially impacting power lines. We will work very closely with our colleagues at PEPCO to address those types of emergencies. We also have additional backup emergency contracted crews available to assist our in-house team. We will be staging equipment at key areas which have been prone to high water volumes. Those types of roadways will have additional personnel available to assist with any emergencies that are necessary. It will be an all-hands-on-deck effort for our agency, so we'll have members of our traffic control teams and others available to assist if there are signal outages. We will also have backup generators to ensure that there's coverage at major intersections. I will defer to Paul Wiedefeld to address the Metro-specific concerns, but as Director Rodriguez suggested, we are very closely coordinating with all of the agencies that are here, all of the utility companies, to ensure that all equipment, anything that's out there right now at construction sites, is safe and secure and prepared for the volume of water that we are anticipating.
Morning. First and foremost, I want to thank the mayor and her entire team for working with us to prepare for this. We're doing a number of things as well, both obviously monitoring, preparing. Just to give you one example, in our underground tunnels, we have 58 pumps that can pump 50,000 gallons of water an hour. So we're exercising all those pumps right now, but we'll have mechanics standing on call if there's any issues during the event. Right now, we plan on normal service. We will monitor. Obviously, the winds are a big concern to us, not for our equipment, but for our customers going out there, particularly on elevated platforms, and obviously if there's heavy water penetration. But one thing I do want to recommend for some of our customers, and that's our Metro Access customers, if possible, if at all possible, to cancel trips on Thursday and Friday until we see this play out. They're some of our most vulnerable customers, and we just want to make sure that they remain safe at all times.
Sam. Go ahead. What's your question, Sam?
Well, are they going to be out cleaning the catch basins? That's one of the things that we often see.
Related to flooding. Mr. Gaddis.
Thank you very much. As you know, there's approximately 25,000 catch basins in the district. We are out cleaning all the catch basins. We do clean them throughout the year. And so we are actually doing overtime right now to do so. But including on top of that, we are also going to have approximately 500 of our individuals in our organization ready at the hot spots that we've identified throughout the district. There's approximately 20 of those hot spots. They are prepared to go to those hot spots. We will tell the residents here in the district that if they do see flooding, don't hesitate to give us a call. We will get out and attempt to unclog whatever it may be and alleviate the flooding or the pooling of water as well. But we are on top of the catch basins and cleaning all of those. The 500 employees is what we plan to have in place this week to help in any issue that may come about regarding stormwater within the district.
I'm just going to, yes.
My question is, the National Park Service levy system created Protect Downtown. What are your thoughts on that?
What is the question?
The National Park Service levy system created Protect Downtown DC in case of flooding.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to ask Director Rodriguez to talk about that.
Yes, we've been in constant contact with National Park Service on the 17th Street levee. They are closely monitoring the gauges along the Potomac, particularly at Wisconsin. When those gauges start to move up, we will have 24-hour notice of any potential flooding that would happen in that area. It takes about 4 hours to erect the levee. So we feel we have the sufficient preparations in place in communication with National Park Service to ensure that we take those protective measures.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to ask you to come up to talk about the PEPCO preparations. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you. PEPCO is in full preparation mode at this point. We have activated our emergency personnel. We have in place our incident management teams. We are beginning to schedule shifts for the weekend to ensure that we have adequate 24-hour coverage throughout the weekend, no matter what might happen. In addition to that, you need to know that we have over 600 line personnel and over 150 tree personnel here at PEPCO ready to respond to any emergency. In addition to that, through our relationship as part of the Exelon family of companies, we are also bringing in additional personnel both from Chicago and from Philadelphia. The Chicago crews will begin traveling tomorrow. The Philadelphia crews, being closer, will start traveling later in the week. So we are in full preparation mode. The last thing I would do is encourage any customers, if you see a downed wire, do not approach a downed wire. In hurricanes, most of the damage is caused by falling trees, falling tree limbs because of the wind and the water. When that happens, it can bring down the power lines. For your safety, do not approach those lines. Give us a call through 1-877-PEPCO-62. We also have a mobile app as well as our website, pepco.com, where you can report outages or any other issues that customers have. Thank you.
And last, yes, ma'am.
Do you guys have specific areas where you're monitoring for flooding?
Yes.
What areas are those?
Yes, so in addition to answering your question, I'm going to ask Director Rodriguez to go day by day on what the current weather forecast is beginning tomorrow. And then.
Again, guys, you're watching an update here from the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, on the state of emergency that has now been declared here in the district. Details here on how to act, how to react, what exactly is happening in the next few days here in D.C.
Late Thursday and into Friday as Florence makes landfall in the Carolinas. There's, according to the National Weather Service, a 95% chance that that's where it's going to make landfall. The amount of rain that we'll see here in the district will depend on whether the hurricane stalls over the Carolinas and its trajectory after it makes landfall in the 48 to 72 hours, again, after it comes onto the East Coast. So we'll begin to see rains Thursday night into Friday and throughout the weekend if the current forecast holds. So we will see torrential rain for at least potentially 3 to 4 days. And again, we are taking necessary precautions to ensure that we're ready for that with all the individuals behind me. And of course, we are briefing the mayor constantly as this forecast is evolving. To the point about flooding, we do have a consolidated map that shows all of the areas that traditionally flood within the district. We've shared that with the mayor as recently as yesterday evening. And we are, again, taking preparations not only with the agencies behind me, but with the ANCs and with all of the residents in those areas. And so, again, these are models, and they are based on the current predictions. And over the next 24 to 36 hours, we'll be able to narrow those areas so that we can begin to, again, take those necessary precautions.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Well, that is the latest from our city here, the District of Columbia. The mayor, of course, Muriel Bowser, they're talking about what's going to happen in the next few days. Really, the Carolinas are the ones to be on the lookout for. This storm could hit them the worst it's ever seen in 60 years. A lot of interesting stats out there rolling around about it making landfall in the Carolinas. So we're going to keep you up to date with that. We're going to keep these maps updated for you and get some live coverage and reports from some of our reporters and meteorologists who are actually headed down to sort of this troubled area here in the Carolinas. We're going to have some people on the road give us a live update. So we're going to coordinate that for you, throw on some other stories of the day, and also show you live pictures of some of the beaches down there in Carolina and South Carolina, north and south, and they're really not getting hit yet. We have a live look right now at Myrtle Beach. Nothing really there, nothing to report, but it is really just the beginning. This is all before the storm actually makes landfall. Right now, they were saying winds of upwards of 159 miles an hour. That was this morning. Category 4 storm, Hurricane Florence, still barreling its way towards this area. This is South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area. So with that, more reports coming up from our reporters who are going down into that area where the storm is going to hit. But take a look at some of the top stories from today, September 11th, some other stories that have been making the rounds on this Tuesday.
Over the median, slam into a tree and then into a dry cleaning business. The driver who captured that video watched it all unfold before his eyes.
I saw the bus jump over to the divider, and then somehow it was a slow, but then after the speed went up and then crashed suddenly. But it was like, in a split moment.
Patel pulled over to help about 20 yards down the road. By the time he arrived back at the bus, bystanders were already working to get the driver and passengers clear. Witnesses say the driver was the worst off, pinned inside the bus. Witnesses tell me a guest at this hotel helped free him. Muni says the 66-year-old operator had been driving with Muni for a long time. What's not clear at this time is whether the driver is in serious condition from the crash or if he had some kind of medical emergency that led to the crash.
Not only do we have access to the surveillance video that have been posted online, but we do have cameras aboard the bus that has angles inside the bus, outside the bus, and video footage of the operator as well.
Once the driver and handful of passengers were clear from the wreckage, crews worked fast, removing the bus, clearing the street, and repairing the sidewalk, trying to get Lombard ready for the evening commute.
Public Works has been instrumental in helping remove some of the materials that have blocked the street, including some of the tree that was here.
Their heads were bowed and heavy with emotion as more names of fallen firefighters were added recently to the FDNY 9/11 Memorial Wall. 343 firefighters lost their lives in the 2001 terror attacks, but there are an additional 182 names that have been added since then. Firefighters who died from 9/11 illnesses they contracted while working at Ground Zero.
We pledged to recover every single person that we could possibly recover from that site. And they toiled in that toxic stew, day in and day out, 24/7, performing a mission that no one else could.
LaMonda says more than 1,000 have been identified as having at least one of the acknowledged World Trade Center illnesses. At the memorial ceremony, Commissioner Nigro says the death toll will continue to rise and could exceed the number of lives lost on the day of the attacks.
The loss of life for our department on September 11th was staggering. But so too is seeing this list of heroes grow each year.
37 Port Authority police and 23 NYPD officers were killed in the attacks. Many officers worked at the World Trade Center site for months afterwards, searching for remains and collecting evidence. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, a former NYPD captain, says some who've been diagnosed with serious 9/11 illnesses are having trouble getting disability pensions. He's calling for an investigation.
When you hear the cases of these officers and what they have gone through, our officers should not have to fight against terrorism and then fight the agency that is supposed to provide them with the basic medical care that comes after their response to this horrific attack.
The former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Christine Todd Whitman, admitted 2 years ago she was wrong to say that air quality here was safe in 2001. She says she was working with the information that she had at the time, doing the best she could, and that she's sorry. In Lower Manhattan, I'm Lisa Evers, Fox 5 News.
It's a day of remembrance and reflection. Hearts will be heavy today as our nation mourns the loss of the nearly 3,000 people killed on 9/11. 17 years later, the pain is still raw. A memorial ceremony will take place on the 9/11 Memorial Plaza at the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan. All morning long, names of the victims will be read by their loved ones.
John and Sylvia.
And while it's been a long road since the landscape of Lower Manhattan was changed forever, with each passing year, the neighborhood continues to grow and flourish.
There are now over 60,000 people who live in Lower Manhattan, 3 times as many as were here on September 11th. We had a record number of 17.4 million visitors to the area last year, many of whom were New Yorkers coming back to see the site. And we are back to our pre-9/11 employment numbers for the first time.
On the land where the Twin Towers once stood, the rebuilding process continues. 2 World Trade is one of the last remaining skyscrapers under construction. Now, art is displayed outside the building in the form of murals.
Our commitment is to bring the entire campus back to life with an energy, with a vibrancy, with a commitment even stronger than existed before.
And just this weekend, another major milestone. The Cortlandt Street subway station reopened for the first time since it was destroyed on 9/11. On the walls, a white marble mosaic with words from the Declaration of Independence.
It's very important that we got this back, and it's wonderful we got it back in time for 9/11.
From Fire and Fury to Unhinged and now Fear, the third book about the Trump administration in just 2 years is out Tuesday. It describes a White House in turmoil where staff members talk down the president behind his back and surreptitiously try to change his decisions about major policy issues. The administration is working overtime to downplay its credibility.
To not even take the time to get a $10 fact checker.
But the author stands by his work.
He says, oh, these are unnamed sources, but these are not unnamed incidents, specific people on specific dates.
The White House is also doubling down on its criticism of the anonymous op-ed in the New York Times. Despite the public rebuke, sources tell Fox News the White House has not launched an investigation to find the author and doesn't have a list of who the author may be, and they won't subject employees to polygraphs.
No lie detectors are being used or talked about or looked at as a possibility.
This comes a day after the vice president said he'd take a lie detector test.
Do you think you know who Anonymous is?
I don't know. But I do know that they should resign and leave this administration.
Today, on the eve of September the 11th, I want to deliver a clear and unambiguous message on behalf of the President of the United States.
The Trump administration's got the ICC in its crosshairs today.
The United States will use any means necessary to protect our citizens and those of our allies from unjust prosecution by this illegitimate court.
And Bolton's not taking any prisoners.
We will not cooperate with the ICC. We will let the ICC die on its own. After all, for all intents and purposes, the ICC is already dead to us.
And he didn't stop there, showing the U.S. isn't afraid to flex more than one foreign policy muscle at a time. Next up on Bolton's hit list, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO.
The Department of State will announce the closure of the Palestine Liberation Organization office here in Washington, D.C.
The State Department explained the decision a few hours ago, saying the PLO has, quote, condemned a U.S. peace plan they have not yet seen and refused to engage with the U.S. government with respect to peace efforts. Bolton making clear, when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Trump administration's officially taking sides.
The United States will always stand with our friend and ally, Israel.
But the Palestinians are punching back, calling on the ICC to immediately open an investigation into Israel, saying, quote, we reiterate that the rights of the Palestinian people are not for sale, that we will not succumb to U.S. threats and bullying, and that we will continue our legitimate struggle for freedom. Bolton also had words of warning for the ICC when it comes to the war in Afghanistan, threatening U.S. sanctions against ICC judges should they launch an investigation into what they say may be war crimes committed by the American military and intel community in Afghanistan. Though the U.S. has never been a member of the ICC and has always kept the court at arm's length, this would be the first time in history America imposed sanctions on court judges.
The ICC prosecutor has requested to investigate these Americans for alleged detainee abuse, an utterly unfounded, unjustifiable investigation.
Bolton's going all in to protect American soldiers who've served in the 17-year-long war in Afghanistan. He also invoked President Trump's first major foreign affairs speech back in 2016, in which he promised to put the American people's security above all else. Bolton said today the administration's renewing its commitment to an America First foreign policy. In Washington, Jillian Turner, Fox News.
One year ago, the eye of Hurricane Irma crossed over the Florida Keys. 130-mile-per-hour winds, rain, and a wicked storm surge. The aftermath was devastating, with homes destroyed and lives uprooted. 1 year later, and for tourists, the Keys looks like it's almost back to normal. But the people who live here know it's not.
The culmination of all the events that have occurred is just almost overwhelming. And Irma was a catastrophe.
William Sasser lives in a FEMA trailer camp on Big Pine Key. His home was destroyed by the storm, and now he's living month to month, not sure when FEMA will make him leave.
Anxiety, I guess is the word I'm searching for. Not really knowing, having a definite, direction.
FEMA says there are still around 100 families living in FEMA trailers. The problem is the people living in them can't find other places to rent because so many of the affordable rentals were destroyed by the storm.
The biggest challenge is affordable housing for our workforce. For our economy to completely recover, we need affordable workforce housing.
With nowhere to live, parts of the population had no choice but to pack up and leave the Keys.
Population loss, I think, will be somewhere between 10 and 20%.
1 year after Irma, and the drive down the overseas highway is as pretty as ever. But county leaders say it will likely be another year until the areas off the beaten path fully recover.
As Carolinians are stocking up, buying plywood, and emptying shelves, people in the Florida Keys are still in recovery mode.
My daughter had just moved into her house.
Even now, emotions are raw for charter boat captain Scott Leopold after Cat 4 Irma slammed into the Florida Keys 1 year ago today. People like him continue to struggle.
There are a number of captains that threw in the towel.
Oh my God. We last met Clay Crockett as he walked into his house and catering business to see for the very first time what was left.
Last time we couldn't even walk into the stuff.
Irma cost him a few $100,000 and he still has a hole in his roof.
I'd rather just keep trying to move forward. The last year has been a very tough year.
Much of the challenge for the tourist-dependent businesses was the loss of thousands of hotel rooms. Just last week, the iconic Hawks Cay Resort finally reopened, with more hotels still to come.
Irma destroyed 1 out of every 4 homes in the Florida Keys, making housing an enormous challenge still. But the first of these brand new elevated cottages are now going online, and the list of people hoping to move into one is long. In Big Pine Key, Phil Keating, Fox News.
And I remember that so clearly last year, the same time, this was Hurricane Irma in the Florida Keys, and people were bracing for that storm. We actually talked to someone on Skype during that down who was in the area. And this time we have one meteorologist and a reporter heading down to the Carolinas and the lower Virginia Beach area to get some reports for tonight. So their live reports will be on digital tonight, more towards sort of the late afternoon on our Facebook page and also on our evening broadcast, because they're going to be down there in the thick of it tomorrow. Meanwhile, we're still tracking what this is looking like. Our live satellite picture is here. And compare that to, let's take this split screenshot to upper right corner. That's Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So not a lot of activity right now. But as we said, our meteorologists will provide the updates coming up later in the afternoon and towards the evening shows to kind of tell you where we're at. And if you're in one of these areas, where to really be buckling down to watching for this storm to hit. So that live satellite will stay up. We're going to keep that there because it's going to be changing as it is live, not just a static shot that's going to be changing throughout the afternoon. And then, of course, you see sort of the calm beaches of Myrtle Beach, but that will most likely change in the coming days. So with that, guys, we're going to kind of leave it on this shot for now. And as we get more live video from various states declaring their states of emergency and governors prepping their states for how to respond to the storm, we're going to bring that to you live as much as we have it, and any other stories that come in, we're going to bring those to you as well. So stay tuned with us here. We should go till about the 2 o'clock hour Eastern time here on YouTube, and then head over to our Facebook page for more digital coverage throughout the evening on this storm. It's definitely the big talker this week, and really it's not kind of hitting ahead till later in the week. So take a close look at Thursday and Friday for more of that. All right, guys, we'll be back with you in a little bit. Take a look at these shots as they continue to change over the next few moments here and hours. And we'll be back with you in a little bit here on Fox 5 Live. Thanks for joining on our stream. If you're on our webpage or our YouTube channel, thanks so much for hanging out. And don't feel free to subscribe to us as well. You can click that red button that says subscribe on YouTube for our channel. All right, guys, see you soon.
and uttered her name before the line went dead silent. In the days after the attack, Dorothy told the investigators there was only one thing she wanted from this field: her husband's wedding ring. They would know it by the inscription etched inside. "All my love," it said, followed by the number 8269, the date of their anniversary. The officers, great people, promised to try, but in this field of records, it seemed certainly impossible. Dorothy began to pray, and she asked her friends to do the same. Days went by, then months. Still no ring. A week before Christmas, on December 19th, she heard a knock at the door. Two officers were standing with a really beautiful, to her, she saw it was so beautiful, she knew what was happening. A beautiful, small white box. Inside it was a wallet, a luggage tag, a driver's license, a small bag with the wedding ring inscribed with those three precious words: all my love. Those words echo across this field. And those words tell the story of 40 men and women who gave all their love for their families, their country, and our freedom. To Dorothy and to every family here today, America will never forget what your loved ones did for all of us. Earlier this week, you dedicated the final part of this memorial, the Tower of Voices. Standing at 93 feet tall, the Tower of Voices is now the first structure visitors see when they come to this now sacred ground. It will hold 40 beautiful chimes that ring throughout these fields, each a unique note, but all in perfect harmony. Each time we hear those chimes playing in the wind, we will remember the 40. We will remember their faces, their voices, their stories, their courage, and their love. And we will remember that free people are never at the mercy of evil, because our destiny is always in our hands. America's future is not written by our enemies. America's future is written by our heroes. As long as this monument stands, as long as this memorial endures, brave patriots will rise up in America's hours of need, and they too will fight back. "17 years ago, 40 incredible men and women showed the whole world that no force on earth will ever conquer the American spirit. We treasure their memory, we cherish their legacy, and we ask God to forever bless the immortal heroes of Flight 93. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the families, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Thank you very much. Indeed, Mr. President, thank you so much for those inspiring and moving words. And once again, we are truly honored to have you and the First Lady with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask that you please remain seated to allow the speakers the opportunity to personally reflect on this solemn ceremony inside the Visitor Center. The United States Navy Band Brass Quintet will now share their talents with us as we conclude today's service. So to all of you, to all of the family members of Flight 93, those who are here with us and those who are not, and to everyone watching at home and all over the world, thank you again for taking the time to remember the passengers and crew members of Flight 93 and the nearly 3,000 lives that were lost on this day 17 years ago. Thank you.
Pretty beautiful tribute there by the Navy Memorial Band, and those were the words of the president this morning at the Flight 93 Shanksville Memorial. That was a new structure that unveiled on Sunday night, and it's actually pretty beautiful. It's 93 feet in height, specifically to commemorate the flight number, and then also there are 40 wind chimes within the structure to commemorate the 40 victims of that flight. So that was sort of the speech. We kind of played it for you in chunks, but eventually in its entirety. And now we're going to close out with a little memorial to 9/11, and encouragement to, of course, never forget what happened 17 years ago today. And we'll close it out there, but we'll be back again tomorrow, guys, for more complete coverage, continued coverage also this afternoon and tonight for the storm, Hurricane Florence, that is rapidly approaching the Carolinas, and a lot more to be unveiled as that changes and things sort of evolve over the next few days. They're looking at possibly landfall in the Carolinas on Thursday or Friday. So we'll make sure we have updates for you from our meteorologists and our reporters who are out there traveling. Actually, one camera quickly live. This is on the road in Virginia now. They're still kind of going down there, but this is Marina Morocco and our photojournalist Dave Rysack on their way down to North Carolina. So more from them coming up later on our digital platform. So don't forget to follow us there. And we'll leave you with this tribute to 9/11 on this Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, 17 years later after the attacks, guys. We'll catch you tomorrow, and take a look.